may I, on behalf of the chair of the session, request what is called, before I call upon Professor Maniruzzaman, the keynote speaker, to give his speech. Let me briefly introduce him. Already he has been introduced in the inaugural session, so I would not like to repeat it. And he is a well-known figure in the legal academia. Professor Maniruzzaman is an established jurist of the time. He is a PhD from University of Cambridge, and he did his masters in the National University of Australia. And he is an reputable mediator and arbitrator of the time. So with this brief introduction, may I call upon Professor Maniruzzaman sir to give his speech. Thank you.
My apology for the problem with my online camera. So you will not see me, but you will hear my voice. The topic that I'll be talking on is climate justice, just energy transition, and sustainable development, pathways to equitable future. This keynote speech will examine the interconnected realms of climate justice, just energy transition, and sustainable development, advocating for integrated strategies that uphold equity, inclusivity, and sustainability to ensure a viable future for all. Climate justice addresses the unequal burdens of climate change impacts, emphasizing the need for resilience building in vulnerable populations. Just energy transition focuses on a fair shift from fossil fuels to renewable sources, taking into account the socio-economic implications and advocating for workforce transitions and equitable energy access. Sustainable development encompasses a holistic approach that includes environmental protection, economic growth, social inclusion, and outlined by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The keynote speech will highlight the synergy and complexities at the intersection of these areas, noting that actions in one domain can significantly influence outcomes in others. It will discuss challenges such as policy silos, resource limitations, and entrenched political and economic interests. The conclusion will emphasize the necessity of cross-sectoral coordination, increased support for developing nations, robust legal protections for vulnerable groups, and enhanced international cooperation to forge a path towards a just, sustainable future underpinned by climate justice. Now, climate justice, just energy transition, and sustainable development are three of the most important issues in the 21st century. These issues are interconnected and require cooperation from people from all walks of life around the world. Some acts, small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world, resolve these monumental proportions. The concept of protecting our environment has historical roots with theoretical beginnings in the 19th century and practical developments appearing in 1972 at the Stockholm Conference on Human Environment held by the United Nations. The Brundtland Report in 1987 articulated the linkage between social issues and ecological sustainability. Sustainable development is an approach to solving current problems that does not compromise future generations in their efforts to solve their problems, contributing to equity within and between generations. Just energy transition is a framework typically related to concepts of environmental justice, equity, social justice, it is essential to understand the limitations of the current fossil fuel-based energy system and what exactly needs to be changed to create change. The energy system should be balanced and quite a good contributor to anthropogenic climate change. And there has been increasing discussion on how to transition or change the energy system to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A low carbon energy system is considered a solution to the climate problem. The reasons for pursuing just energy transition are numerous and varied. Henry Sanders articulates several motivations for adopting a new energy policy, including climate change, migration, energy security, economic development, human health. These motivations provide a comprehensive rationale for the transition and suggest that in reality, there might be no going back to the provisions of fossil fuel energy system. A new energy system must be resilient with the ability to adapt to the changing climate and not exacerbate the current problems. This implies that the energy system must be sustainable, which can be interpreted as a low reliance on depleting natural resources and a focus on renewable energy sources. A sustainable energy system is also synonymous with an equitable energy system and contrasts with the current energy system, which has resulted in all-time highs in global wealth levels while leaving 1/6 of the world population without access to modern energy services. In conclusion, the energy justice, energy transition, and sustainable development are interconnected and require cooperation from people from all walks of life. By taking small steps and working together, we can transform the world and address the pressing issues of climate change and sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Pathway aims to promote energy services that enhance the quality of life, the environment, the health of current and future generations. This involves considering the needs of the poor and the resources of the environment, aiming for wiser energy choices. This leads to improved migration and adaptation possibilities and eventually leads to a just energy transition. Sustainable development fosters economic social well-being by focusing on energy services for the poor, safeguarding and enhancing the global environment in the face of greater energy use and the need to combat adverse climate change and promoting a more secure and equitable energy future. This is possible through the development and transfer of environmentally sound energy technologies, provision of reliable and modern energy services to the poor, and implementation of energy policies that reduce adverse effects on the global environment. Climate justice is an evolving concept that has been brought about out of real concern of our climate and its well-being. It has various definitions and applications, but the United Nations defined climate justice as the recognition that global warming is a human right issue since its worst effects are visited on the poor. This is particularly notable in underdeveloped countries, charting plans for low to no carbon emissions often see the countries foregoing in the use of cheap and efficient and high polluting energy technology in favor of more costly and generally less efficient technology. Climate justice focuses on the who, what, when, where, why of climate justice, focusing on who, what, when, where, and why it is affected by all people's actions and policies over time. It is unique in that it predominantly deals with a social issue, with the effects of climate change being felt more severely by certain groups of people because of their race, class, and or economic status, and it is often the poor who are most vulnerable. Environmental justice at large centers on the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Climate justice extends the focus of environmental justice to the global scale, acknowledging that developed countries are responsible for the majority of greenhouse gas emissions and that have accumulated in the atmosphere over the last 150 years and have caused the global warming that is responsible for the climate change. This burden is being felt most heavily by the world's poorest and most vulnerable communities that are least responsible for climate change. This climate justice movement aims to correct the inequities that exist in the present situation by implementing two key principles: the principle of historical responsibility, which states that those who are responsible for the greater share of the burden of climate change should bear the greater burden of solution, and the principle of collective justice, which states that those who have done the least to cause the problem of climate change and yet are suffering the gravest consequences should be entitled to the most help in adapting to its effects. Climate justice is a crucial aspect of development, recognizing that the primary responsibility for climate change lies with the world's rich industrialized nations and most affluent groups in all countries. This injustice is being addressed by the world community as the adverse effects of climate change are already hitting poor communities the hardest. To address this issue, an effective way to understand who is responsible for climate change and how to mitigate it involves analyzing the root causes and effects using the pressure state impact response PSIR framework. This approach can be applied to map alternatives onto both the root causes and the effects of climate change, helping to formulate ways to prevent the recurrence of the same problems. Policies implemented to reduce greenhouse gas emissions have massive potential to generate both positive and negative social impacts. Phasing out fossil fuel subsidies and rapidly transitioning to renewable energy can produce new jobs, reduce localized environmental degradation, which poorly designed mitigation policies can lead to widespread job losses and disproportionately affect already disadvantaged communities. Similarly, many adaptation projects carry both negative and positive social outcomes. It is essential that policymakers consider the social implications of climate policy and ensure that decision-making is inclusive and informed by those who may be impacted. From a climate justice perspective, it is essential to ensure that countries fulfill their obligations to the global community and all the individuals are provided with the opportunity to participate in the decision-making processes that are meaningful to their livelihoods and well-being. A just energy transition is essential due to the adverse effects of climate change and energy usage on the environment and human health. Transitioning to renewable energy sources is a key ingredient in solving the climate change conundrum. Making this change to renewables holds great promise for sustainable development at local, national, and global levels. In political and economic terms, energy is crucial in the development of a country and is crucial ingredient in the production of goods and services. Developing countries should be able to bypass unsustainable practices that many developed nations have undertaken in the past. Participation in the global economy gives a chance for informed decision concerning the types of energy and technology developing countries will employ. Also, developed countries have a chance to change their ways in a forward fashion by adopting renewable resources at every opportunity. A just energy transition promotes the use of renewable energy, moving away from dirty and harmful forms of energy such as coal and nuclear. Renewable energy is derived from natural processes that are replenished at a rate equal to or greater than the rate at which they are consumed. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, produced a report that outlines the need for an energy revolution to avoid the impacts of climate change and enable sustainable development. In conclusion, climate justice, just energy transition, and sustainable development are essential components of addressing climate change and ensuring equitable access to clean energy for all. Equitable access to clean energy is crucial for addressing climate change and ensuring equitable access for all communities. However, the current energy caste system often disadvantages economically disadvantaged individuals as they are unable to benefit from public and private investment in clean and renewable energies. Low-income communities already spend a higher percentage of the income on energy costs, leading to increased energy costs and reduced spending on essential goods and services. The economic burden of current energy transition policy will fall hardest on those who can least afford to deal with it. Current cheapest paths to emissions reductions involve increasing the cost of energy, such as carbon taxes and incentive programs for renewable energies. Due to socio-economic disparities in current energy market, low-income communities and communities of color will suffer the greatest negative impacts from climate change while remaining equally disadvantaged in energy transition that follows. To mitigate the disproportionate impacts on marginalized communities, implementing a renewable energy economy can eliminate environmental racism and classism. Marginalized communities are forced to live in areas with high levels of pollution and environmental degradation due to the lack of economic and political clout to prevent
Sir, if
the
you excuse
establishment
me,
of
sir.
toxic industries near the homes. So just in a couple of minutes, I'll close it up.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Sustainable development is a process of change that balances resource utilization, investment direction, technological development, orientation, and institutional change to enhance both current and future potential to meet human needs from the holistic point of view. So I was trying to just, integrate these different sort of areas, very much related to each other and one another, just depending which way you look at. Then, of course, there would be a comprehensive, set of a strategy that will deal with the environmental havoc, climate change havoc, and all sorts of sustainable development issues. So this is an area for development and for further research. So that is the kind of tone that I want to put on to end this sort of keynote speech. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so
Professor
much,
Anwar
sir, for
Jahid.
your wonderful presentation and very, very significant topic you have talked about. Now this floor is open for your comment or question, please. Thanks.
May I ask
please.
comments, please, if you allow, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please. Go ahead, please.
Professor Maniruzzaman, it's very, very insightful and thorough research what you have conducted and what you have presented. I was very much delighted to hear this. So the request and question I have, I know you are a very busy person being a chair professor in a university. When I was also chair professor, it was very difficult with the socialism. So the question is, are you interested to collaborate with NSRIC and its associates so that we can scale it up and try to get some funding from the Canadian government? And
Well, if you allow me, yes, my door is always open. And certainly I have had vast experience in this field of collaborative research across different countries, different professions. And the project that I finished with with UNESCO entitled International Sustainable Development Law, it is an interdisciplinary kind of project, though but principally it's a legal project, but various related aspects from the interdisciplinary perspectives. This project was very much sort of ingrained. So yes, I'm interested in interdisciplinary as well as legal research. Yes, of course. We can discuss further if you have any good idea. There will be British funding as well as Canadian funding.
Yeah, personally, I am very much interested in sustainability for sure. In that case, thank you so much for your interest. So I would be requesting Professor Jahid from here to take care of it, and we will have some time, another floor, another, we will organize another meeting. Thank you.
Definitely, we can work together with our sir. Yes, Professor Maniruzzaman. Yeah, I mean, Mamunathan Sir Khan, please.
Thank you so much. I was really deeply impressed and enlightened by your presentation. And I can see the challenge my country is facing and will be facing in this regard. From today, it appears to me challenges are even more complex, even more complicated, and more future looking than we can imagine today. Because in the context of our weak legal system and rule of law, it would be really difficult to address many of the issues. Whatever data, whatever projection you will be presenting us, if our legal system, legal structure, and legal institutions remain so fragile, then how we will be able to face these gigantic challenges ahead? If you could enlighten us in this regard.
Well, yes, that's very interesting because I'll be talking the same topic, just to deliver my, sort of lecture called A.K. Khan Memorial Lecture to Chittagong University on the 29th April. So that's the topic that has been sort of sorted, and I'll be talking various aspects of them. But briefly, to mention that, yes, a country's law can be quite weak, quite archaic, may not be fit for purpose, may not be that responsive to modern changes, whatever you mentioned, climate change, environmental justice, new sort of ideas about human rights, then digital transformation in different sectors, and how to deal with those sort of things in a modern way, to be on par with the rest of the world, to deal with these sort of new challenges. Yes, the law of that country must be updated. There must be appropriate reform of the law, so that the law is up to date and it can face the challenges. Now, the laws of the old colonial vestiges, which were more than 100 years old, the time was completely different, when the law was made, to be responsive and fit for purpose of these old centuries. But now, can we live with this and live up to our expectations with this law? The answer is in the negative anyway, and that we can realize in various ways. While doing online transactions, do e-commerce, do sort of online dispute resolution, and the big challenges and the threats which are just appearing on a daily basis, through climate change litigations. Of course, Bangladesh courts are just trying to, understand the climate change, sort of dilemma, and there will be more cases to follow. And various countries are being overburdened with climate change issues. And I mean, the legal system is not well prepared to deal with those situations. So, there are lots of definitional issues, as I said, in the context of European Convention on Human Rights, that no European court dares deal with this kind of, aspects of, victim status. The Swiss court, said quite clearly that, that's beyond our remit. And then the vulnerable ladies group, by the initiation of NGOs, sort of appeared before the European Court of Human Rights, in 2020, and now in 2024 they have got a positive judgment, and very landmark sort of judgment, and that will have a ripple impact globally, whether you can say in the sense of new legislation or new court practices and all sorts of things. So things are just beginning to emerge, and these big challenges will be confronted by national courts, international courts, and of course this European Court human sort of rights judgment will also open door for the International Court of Justice in terms of new interpretations in the context of the advisory opinion on states' obligations for climate changes and everything. That's their due to sort of issue in the near future, sort of advisory opinion. So this whole ball game is evolving in a way, and in the face of it, how the national courts, I mean, not to mention Bangladesh court, but any country's courts and developed countries' courts, will sort of deal with those sort of things. So yes, certainly Bangladesh legal system and the court system will be prepared to be fit for purpose to deal with those things. Now, where human rights, environmental justice, climate justice, and other sort of allied matters would be very much prominent. So here we are at the crossroads.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Can you proceed, sir? Can you proceed to the paper presentation with your kind permission? Sir,
You are asking whom?
Professor Maniruzzaman, sir, are you done?
Well,
yes,
I think I've taken more than
I
more than my
think
share.
he gave
Yeah, we can. We are more.
Professor
We are
gave a
immense.
very nice and comprehensive answer to them. Only problem I find in the case of Bangladesh that our legal education system is also falling so behind. Then I am becoming very skeptical how to prepare.
I'm sure.
How to prepare our next generation. Those who even don't like to understand the concept of, for example, limited government, concept of accountability by their responsibilities through their responsibility. So there is a huge interconnected issues are there. And I hope you will address those issues. If I knew that, I might be I might be listening your address in Chittagong University.
Thank you, sir.
I think this time I will fail to do that.
We can further hear from Professor Maniruzzaman sir and from you, organizing some special session at some time later on these similar issues. Because of time constraint, with your kind permission, I proceed with paper presentation.
Thank you so much. But I would like to present some books to him. If you allow me.
That's very kind of you. Yes, certainly we can be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much.